shortly and also catch back up with the Conservative leadership race. There's now 10 of them going forward. Away from that, though, up to 200 people, many of them women, are expected to take part in a rally this morning in support of the Spearmint Rhino Strip Club in Sheffield. Earlier this year, 2 men working as undercover private investigators filmed some dancers in the club, apparently breaching its licence by offering sexual services that go further than the licence permits. Sheffield Council is now investigating whether to renew Spearmint Rhino's licence when it expires. But the threat of closure has caused some of the women who work there, including several female students, to demonstrate in favour of the club. So are strip clubs still OK? Do they still have a place in modern Britain? Let's talk to 2 women on different sides of the debate. Gabby Willis is Women's Officer at Sheffield Hallam Students' Union and is helping organise the rally today in support of the club. Good morning, Gabby.
Hi, good morning.
And Dr. Sasha Rakoff is Chief Executive of Not Buying It, one of the pressure groups campaigning against the club. Good morning to you, Sasha.
Hi there, hi.
Gabby, I'll come to you first in terms of the side of being against this club being shut down. Why are you on that side of this?
I'm not on the side against the club.
Oh, excuse me, in support of the club. I meant against the shutting down of the club. Why are you against that?
Well, workers deserve a safe place to work, really, and kind of that's the main thing that we're fighting for here for the dancers that work in the club. Their voices should be listened to, and if this footage exists, which we the campaign on behalf of the dancers doesn't actually have any proof that it does yet, it is illegal footage, really, and constitutes revenge porn. So we are fighting for their rights to have a safe place to work.
Why have you got involved with this?
Personally?
Yes, and tell us a bit about the rally itself as well.
So personally, in my role as Women's Officer at Hallam Students' Union, I've always when I ran to be elected, I've always stood on a very kind of strong sex-positive policy, because I believe that sex positivity is really important for the liberation of women and for students in general. So I think working with people such as the dancers at Spearmint is really important. Not that we're speaking on behalf of Spearmint, I have to make that clear as well. So for myself, it's about kind of supporting women and allowing them to have autonomy over their own bodies and make their own decisions and do what they feel empowered by, or what they feel they need to do to raise money and get by in life. It's a students' issue as well, because a lot of students go into this to fund them through their studies, and we are actually, the Students' Union is right next door to the club, so that's kind of one of the main reasons why we've become so heavily involved.
And you dispute this video evidence. I mean, if it comes out that it's actually, real, that there isn't something to be disputed, putting aside the fact of it potentially being considered revenge porn as you describe it, there is obviously an argument there that perhaps the club isn't a safe place for women.
You could pursue that argument, but I have spoken to and worked with a lot of the dancers at the club. They all abide by the rules, and even if they didn't abide by the rules, it's still completely unfair and to film someone naked without their consent.
No, that's a very serious charge. I just suppose specifically around the point of that shouldn't be happening. That's not part of what the licence is there for. Yeah,
of course, but we feel that the licence should be re-granted, because licences are needed so that these safe places to work can exist, because kind of fundamentally the women who work in these situations as strippers, as dancers, they're freelancers. They work at the club, and the club provides them with a safe place to work. And if they didn't have that safe place to work, they would be pushed into a lot more dangerous situations.
Sasha, let me bring you into this at this point. What would you say to that argument?
Which one?
The argument there, just that last argument about it's a safe place to work. If there weren't these places, there would be far more dangerous places.
Oh, well, they aren't safe places to work. They all have this veneer of respectability about them. But we're not just talking about Spearmint Rhino in Sheffield, where extreme levels of sexual contact were found, which women have to provide to make any money at all. This is the pattern across the industry. I'd be astonished if there's a club in the country where women aren't having to provide sexual contact or even sex acts in order to make any money. This is how the industry operates. It's what's expected by punters, it's what's expected by management, it's what's expected by the lap dancers, because this is the environment that they're in.
But to Gabby's point, though, in the sense of having a safe place to work, and that many of the women that she's spoken to want to be able to earn money in this way, in the sense of this is what they're able to earn money through doing, and they find it a safe place. You can't deny their experience, can you?
Well, I think often women in the industry deny their experiences. Every single woman in the strip industry always says it's a big, happy family, the rules are never broken, there is no sexual contact. Yet we know, not least from these private investigations, that there is sexual contact. We know that is the norm across the industry. So when you're in this industry, it's very hard to be that truthful. You have a different perspective of what normality is and what your boundaries are crossed from the minute you start working there. Things you would never have considered doing become absolutely normal. It's not until you leave, when we speak to a lot of women who've left, that you start to be able to be really honest about what was going on, how harmful it was.
What would you say, though, is the solution, in the sense of, are you saying that all strip clubs shouldn't have licences anymore, that they are outmoded institutions in this country?
Yes, of course. It's ridiculous to talk about time's up with sexual harassment when sexual harassment is the job description in a strip club, where we're breeding Harvey Weinsteins every time men go in there and think it's perfectly acceptable to buy women sexually. They stumble out drunk and aroused. The number of female students, and, the women's officers should be representing all women students. The number of students at Sheffield Hallam who say that they afraid to walk around. They get screamed, you're good enough to rape, when men are coming out. Lecturers are saying that...
I'm sorry, I'd like to dispute that. I do accurately represent all of my students. They elected me to stand for them on sex positivity. It was a strong part of my campaign. And I'm doing work for things like that as well. So I could strongly dispute you saying that, but carry on.
Maybe they're too scared to speak to you, because we've certainly experienced a huge amount of intimidation, threats, harassment. There's a really incendiary, nasty atmosphere around, where a lot of people, including your own students, feel quite scared to speak out against the industry, because it's now seen you have to be pro it, or you're going to be screamed that you're a turf or a swerve, which are very inflammatory terms, obviously, to young people.
It's inflammatory to be a turf or a swerve. I'm sorry, that's the truth.
Yeah, it's inflammatory.
Sasha, can I
for no real reason? Yeah.
Can I read you a message that's just come in from one of our listeners, Tammy, who says, with regards to you, this woman does not, capital letters, know what she's talking about. As a former dancer, I know dancing is safe. So that is from a former dancer. I suppose what you can't say for sure, Sasha, is that every single person who's stripped has had that experience that you're talking about.
Well, this is how the industry operates, so you have to provide sexual contact. So that's an automatic breach of the licensing terms, etc. The idea that this is keeping women out of more dangerous forms of activities like full-blown prostitution is ridiculous, because obviously it's a grooming ground for prostitution. It's a feeder for the men who come out of strip clubs aroused and drunk, wanting perhaps a bit more. And it's a grooming ground for the young women who are half prostituting themselves already in order to make £20.
Gabby, let me come back to you on something slightly separate, if I may, which is, you say you campaigned to be the women's officer on the grounds of sex positivity. Of course, at the same time, this is the climate, which was just referred to by Sasha there, of the Me Too era, of women making sure that they do have the right to make sure that there's consent and to have their consent wishes fully respected. I suppose some people listening to this may be confused as to how you can hold both of those values true at the same time when you have institutions within society. There's still not nearly as many male strip clubs. It's still not nearly the same kind of industry in terms of popularity with women to go to a strip bar and see men after work as it is the other way around. How can you not see these institutions as profoundly anti the Me Too movement and anti-equality?
I think because really it's the women who work there's choice. A thing that Sasha has said really is that women are being objectified on the street, and of course that is true, and we want to stop all harassment, all abuse. I myself am a survivor of sexual abuse, so it's not something that I'm going to stand down and not speak up against. But one of the important things to acknowledge is that when we go out to a club or a bar, we're not putting ourselves in a situation where we are allowing people to respond to our bodies in that way. It's just unacceptable. Whereas a dancer in a club, she has made the choice to show her body in that way, and she's made the choice to be sexual. She's not being sexualized when she's just trying to have a good time doing something completely different.
And that would be the distinction that you would make. Well, it's prompted great discussion already from our listeners. Thank you very much. We'll keep up to date with what's going on with that rally and what happens with the licence. Gabby Willis, Women's Officer at Sheffield Hallam Students' Union, and Dr. Sasha Rakoff, Chief Executive of Not Buying It. It's one of the pressure groups campaigning against the club. We'll bring you more on that as we have it. As I say, more messages coming in on that. Your holiday mishaps, we have been hearing from you about those, which was prompted